Alright, so if you have a dad that has ever complained about how everything they play on the radio now is pretty much just soulless junk, and back in his day, music used to really mean something, then buckle up, because Christmas just came early for him with this movie. A Complete Unknown is the newest musical biopic about the legendary Bob Dylan, and it's basically about the early stages of his career from when he shows up in New York City in the 1960s, up until he decides to start moving away from the traditional folk genre that he got famous for originally. And I'll start this one off by saying that I've never been a huge Bob Dylan fan, and it's not that I don't like his music or anything like that, so you can put the pitchforks down for a second, but he's just never been someone that I've found myself actively gravitating towards. Jimi Hendrix, Johnny Cash, The Doors, Creedence Clearwater Revival, that's who I listen to the most from that time period, even though I can fully recognize the insane amount of influence that Bob Dylan has had on the history of American music. When it comes to A Complete Unknown, Timothée Chalamet is an actor that has grown on me a lot over the last few years, and I'm always a fan of whenever James Mangold is behind the camera, as long as we're not talking about his Indiana Jones movie. So this was a project I was definitely excited for, even if I'm someone that doesn't have a huge personal connection or fascination with the central figure of the movie at all. And after seeing the film for myself, I'm happy to say that it's definitely one of the most well-acted, well-directed, and just entertaining movies of the entire year if you enjoy musical biopics. Now, the first thing we gotta talk about here is the performances, because they will essentially make or break a movie like this, and the vast majority of the time has to be spent on Timothée Chalamet. He's the star of the show and decides to take on the persona of this musical icon, which is obviously never an easy task when you're impersonating someone with as massive of a fan base as Bob Dylan. But I thought he did a good job, both in the more dramatic scenes and when he goes full-on concert mode. Like I said, I don't have a huge history or personal connection here, so maybe bigger fans than me will find some critiques, but I was impressed with what I saw. It also doesn't hurt that he's backed up here by a killer lineup of actors. I have always loved Ed Norton, and he does a great job with his supporting role. Monica Barbaro and Elle Fanning do a convincing job displaying this messy love triangle our main character finds himself in, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't become completely addicted to watching Boyd Holbrook as Johnny Cash in this movie. Even though all they did was give him dark hair and a pair of brown contact lenses, the guy legitimately disappears into the role. If he doesn't get a call from the Cash estate asking him to tour the world as Johnny, or at least start doing birthday parties, I'm officially calling it a missed opportunity. But seriously, best acting I've ever seen from him. What really surprised me with this movie though is how the actual plot ended up being structured, because it kind of feels more like a concert movie than just your typical musical biopic. I seriously couldn't believe how many performances were crammed into this film and how much the actual dramatized scenes and dialogue was put on the back burner. Like there's a chance you're gonna forget where you are and start holding up your lighter in the middle of the theater if you're not careful. And that's not to say that there aren't plenty of moments that take place away from the studio and the music festivals, but since the movie is pretty long and a big reason for that is to incorporate all of these performances, the amount of dialogue is kind of dwarfed in comparison. But it all works out in the end, because even though we don't get a ton of these big character development moments when he's off the stage, James Mangold finds a way to make us learn so much about Bob Dylan and how he progresses as an artist during all of the performance scenes we get, just from watching his demeanor and seeing how the content of his music changes as time goes on. I will say though, I don't know if this film is going to end up being all that rewatchable for people unless you're already a diehard fan. Like, I don't see it being the type of movie that you're going to stop and revisit if you see it while you're flipping through the channels laying on the couch. Clocking in at around 2.5 hours long and having so many musical numbers in it definitely creates for a unique movie watching experience, and I commend it for that. But I just don't know if that's gonna elicit a feeling that I'm gonna be craving again and again. Don't get me wrong, I love a long movie as much as the next guy, but living among a generation that has become engineered to have the attention span of a goldfish, I'm very curious to see how younger audiences will relate to this one. Overall, guys, A Complete Unknown is definitely one of the most well-acted movies of the entire year, and one that I think does justice to the early stages of Bob Dylan's career. If you're already a big fan of this type of music, music, you're probably really going to enjoy yourself because the film ends up feeling like a straight-up concert movie rather than your run-of-the-mill traditional musical biopic. I don't know if this movie's long runtime is completely justified, and it kind of makes it a little less rewatchable, but if you're a true Dylanologist, you might just end up being head over heels with this one. A Complete Unknown gets a Sully score of 4 stars. So that's my review for the latest musical biopic. What do you think is your favorite movie from James Mangold? I think I'd probably have to go with Ford v Ferrari, but let me know in the comments below what you think. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys at the next one.